Coming at number 5, the Miami sack man, Gregory Rousseau, 15.5 sacks last year, second most behind only Chase Young. Checking up at number 4, an Alabama linebacker who did not play a snap last season due to an ACL injury, Dylan Moses. Back in 2018, 86 tackles to lead Bama, also had 10 tackles for loss. Penn State linebacker Micah Parsons checks in at number 3, first-team All-American last year, over 100 tackles, 5 sacks, 14 tackles for loss, and 4 forced fumbles for the Nittany Lion linebacker. Number 2, we go out west, Oregon's big, impressive talent, Kayvon Thibodeaux, 9 sacks, 14 tackles for loss last season. He was the Pac-12 Freshman Defensive Player of the Year. Remember, in the Pac-12 championship game, he really had a big one, 2.5 sacks and a blocked punt in that one. And number 1, the sophomore, Derrick Stingley Jr. As a true freshman last year, he was a first-team All-American, led the SEC with 6 picks and 15 pass breakups last season. Joel, you get first ups. Why is he number 1 on your defensive list?
He's one of the best young corners I've seen in college football. And there's been some good ones. And certainly Coach has seen a lot of them because Ohio State seems to have the first cornerback taken off the board in the NFL draft almost every single year. But Derrick Stingley is phenomenal. He's got great ball skills. He's patient for a young player. He's good at the line of scrimmage. He's got the length. And then that ball skill translates into big plays. And that's exactly what you want with those 6 interceptions, the PBUs. What I love most about his game, though, is for a corner, I think that one of the most underrated traits that you can have is to be a long and smooth strider. Because what that does is it allows you not to panic. So he can catch up, he can chase, he can be in front, he can do all the different things you need to do out on the outside. And he does them very well. And then the last thing is iron sharpens iron, remember? And he gets to go up against a guy like Jamar Chase in practice every single day. He is an absolute threat. I think he's the best defender in the country. He can shut down basically an entire side of the field. And he's just a true freshman last year. So phenomenal talent.
Maddie, let's go to the Big Ten. Micah Parsons, this is a talent that reminds you of blank, blank, blank.
Yeah, well, first of all, you just rattled off all his stats last year, and the word that comes to mind is just he's really versatile. And if you look at a couple college football players last year that just got drafted, you look at Isaiah Simmons at Clemson, who was the Swiss Army knife in the box. He obviously played safety, linebacker, could rush the passer. He was long and lanky. That's what Parsons is. You can see him right there. He's just long and lanky and athletic. And then also Kenneth Murray at Oklahoma in the regards of the sideline to sideline, the speed, and just always around the football. I mean, this guy is unbelievable. And he finished the season last year against against Memphis in the Cotton Bowl, 14 tackles, 2 forced fumbles. And our guest coming up a little later, James Franklin, I talked to him a little earlier this week about him, and he said the scary thing about Micah Parsons, he's only been playing linebacker for a couple years, and he hasn't even scratched the surface of his talent. So I think another big year is in store for him. And Coach, I know obviously when you were at Ohio State, you had firsthand experience dealing with this special player.
I actually was knee-deep in recruiting Micah Parsons, and I thought when I first heard that Penn State was going to use him a linebacker, I thought he'd get too big. I mean, we recruited him as defensive end. And when I started hearing that, I thought, well, that's nonsense. He's not going to play linebacker. He'll get too big. So you're looking at a big man now. He's a guy that can run. He's big. There's a reason why he has such an ability at the line of scrimmage and when he pressures and blitzes them, because he has D-lineman mentality. So I think he could be, by the end of the year, the number 1 player in America on defense. I think he's that good, a big physical guy. And like you said, like Coach Franklin said, he's only done this for a couple of years. He was a defensive end in high school, and it's amazing what they've done with him.
Joel, Kayvon Thibodeaux, he was the number 2 overall recruit in the 2019 class, had a tremendous freshman campaign in Eugene. Try to describe for me what you think his ceiling is.
Well, who knows? I think it's as high as anybody's out there. It's so rare that a guy comes in with that amount of acclaim and expectations and reaches that, and then to some degree even goes above that. Stingley did it at LSU at corner, which I already talked about, and Thibodeaux at Oregon did that. And what I loved most about his game is that his explosive ability in the backfield in terms of pass rush really started showing up late in the season. He didn't have that freshman drop off where they get tired and it's a long season. He got better and better and better. You can tell that he was a gym rat. He understood the nuances of rushing the passer, started learning that a little bit better. And then his most dominant games were late in the season when they needed it most. A big reason why they were able to win the Rose Bowl, beat Wisconsin, win the Pac-12 championship over Utah. He was a force to be reckoned with. And I think that he's going to pick up right where he left off here like week 1 and week 2, and he's going to need to, remember, because he plays Trey Lance, the quarterback from North Dakota State, to open things, who's one of the best prospects from the NFL perspective in college football. And then he's going to get the Ohio State Buckeyes. And I got to tell you, watching him rush Justin Fields, I think is going to be a treat. Let's hope that we get that game.
And that's, again, you said it all, Joel. I just think the fact that he was just a freshman and he's still growing. He's going to get bigger. He's going to get stronger. And as you said, at the second half of the season, he started really understanding what tackles are going to do to you. The line is going to slide to you, all of those things. And he still was able to overcome that. He's only going to get better. He's going to continue to learn the different traits that you need to be a defensive end, all those things. Rob, his ceiling, I think he's a future #1 draft pick. If he continues to go this way, I think that's how good of a player he is.
And this is a guy that, as you mentioned, Joel, finished strong, led the nation with 7 sacks in the fourth quarter. Let's go about Dylan Moses. And I know, Matt, you talked to some of the folks at Alabama this week. And even though he didn't play a snap last season, he is off the charts in their eyes right now.
Yeah, I talked to Steve Sarkisian, my former quarterback coach at USC, just to catch up. And we talked about Dylan Moses. And I just said, how much did you miss him last year? And he said, oh my gosh, like there was a reason why they struggled defensively for Alabama standards. I think they gave up the most points per game since 2007. And you go back to what he did 2 years ago. I think you said earlier, 86 tackles, 10 tackles for loss, All-American candidate, probably would have been, a preseason All-American, obviously last year he suffered the injury. What they do defensively, and Sark telling me this, they put a lot on their middle linebacker, just like a quarterback has a lot of pressure and complexities of an offense. They put a lot on their middle linebacker. Well, they played freshman last year. He said Dylan Moses, by far and away, as far as being a leader on the field, off the field, just is outstanding. Not to mention, I think he used the word, just an absolute physical specimen in the middle. So I'm just really excited. He's healthy. He's back. He's a tremendous football player. And watch, Alabama's defense will greatly improve statistically because he'll be healthy and back in the middle of that defense.
Well, the Dylan Moses injury to Alabama was a lot like when Nick Bosa got hurt at Ohio State. You're not only they're taking out your best defensive player, but you're also taking out the heart and soul of Alabama defense. What you said about Alabama's defense is correct. That is, he is the quarterback. The middle linebacker is basically the Nick Saban on defense. Another thing about Dylan, I saw him firsthand at a really powerful high school football program, IMG, in Bradenton, Florida. And he walked in the room and he looked like he was 25 years old, and this 3 years ago. And I speak on behalf of all us and the coach in me that when I saw that young guy get hurt that early in the season, it breaks everyone's heart. Because I know how hard of a worker it was. And you're darn right that impacted Alabama's defense. So if he stays healthy, watch for that guy to be an All-American. That's how good he is.
Coach, let's talk about one guy that was not on our consensus top 5 list, but got votes from 3 of us. Shawn Wade, the cornerback at Ohio State. You told us yesterday he's the type of guy that every team would want. Why?
Well, everyone looks for that hybrid position. I actually would put that on my recruiting board and say, okay, here's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see an H-back that can play running back. I would like to see that tight end that is athletic enough to play receiver, because that is very hard to match up against. Same thing on defense. Everyone's looking for an outside linebacker / defensive end, a guy that can do both, and a nickel / corner. And what I mean by that is a longer, stronger, and a very physical guy that can line up inside, because a lot of times that's where the offense will put their best player on the inside receiver. And a lot of times just certain corners can only play on the outside. Shawn Wade is that hybrid player. He can do both. Matter of fact, I can see Ohio State matching him up every week on the opponent's best receiver wherever he lines up and say, go eliminate that guy. That's how good he is.
Yeah, Coach, I couldn't agree more. And as you know, Jeff Hafley, who was the defensive coordinator, co-coordinator with Greg Madison at Ohio State, He brought more of an NFL matchup style secondary structure where they were going to play more zone coverage. And he did something very interesting last year with Ohio State. And that was he decided, listen, why do we have to play with 2 safeties and 2 corners? Why can't we play with 3 corners and 1 safety and play a more matchup-oriented style of football? And so they began navigating this road of what does it look like to have 3 corners on the field at all times? Fuller being the safety, Wade being kind of a safety that was really a corner in the slot at all times. And it was so successful. Wade played that position brilliantly. It was the key to the defense, at least in my estimation, because it was such a unique style of decent defense. No one else really has run that. It was such a little bit of a change-up. So when he got ejected from that game against Clemson, there wasn't a more impactful player that you could have ejected from the game from Ohio State. Even if you were to eject Chase Young, there's a lot of defensive ends. Maybe you wouldn't have that impact player on the edge. But the key to the defensive structure for Ohio State was Shawn Wade. And because of his ability to play that inside middle kind of man coverage from a slot perspective. If he would have come out in last year's NFL draft, he would have been selected in the first round. That's how good he was. And, I go back to the fact that little nuance in that Clemson game of having him not on the field, Fuller had to go down to play his position. All of a sudden, Ohio State was disheveled on defense because they couldn't play the structure that got them there. And that's why I think Shawn Wade, his impact, his ability, is why I put him in the top 5.
For the best access, perspective, and personalities in all of sports, follow us at Fox Sports on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoy that clip, make sure you click subscribe somewhere down here. From game highlights to exclusive interviews and rankings, we've got everything you need as a college football fan right here, College Football on Fox.